Martin Luther's ideas spread quickly throughout Germany and across Europe. As Luther churned out book after book, the printers ramped up production because everyone wanted to read Luther. He soon became the first great popular author. Luther tapped into the public's desire for reform, but his ideas were not new. Many church theologians over the ages had taught the same things, including St. Augustine and the Apostle Paul.
Luther never saw himself as somebody who was bringing something new. And my Reformation is not the freedom to do new things. This is not a new theology. This is the scriptural theologies. This is the theology of Christ. This is the theology of the apostles. This is the theology of the early church fathers that has been corrupted in time. I'm just taking us back to that.
Luther's ideas brought opposition. The Catholic Church of his day taught a theology that depended on human effort to earn God's favor. The Pope sent representatives to persuade Luther, but he would not back down. As a result, his writings were condemned as contrary to church doctrine and burned in the public squares wherever they could be found. Soon, Luther was called to the city of Worms to answer the charges against him. The meeting ended by condemning Luther as an outlaw, guilty of high treason. Luther, and those who agreed with him, feared his execution. But Frederick the Wise chose to shield the famous Professor Luther in protective custody at the Wartburg Castle. Luther grew a beard as a disguise. In his absence, the Reformation continued.
The people back in Wittenberg are wanting to continue what Luther did. They're wanting to continue reforming.
But without Luther's direct influence, the Reformation veered off track, descending into violence. The people of Wittenberg assumed that Reformation meant destruction of all things Catholic. They smashed church statues, broke stained glass windows, and descended into chaos.
Some misinterpreted Luther's opposition to the Roman papacy as a license to go ahead and destroy anything that was Catholic and to inflict harm on priests and Catholics. That was wrong. It was incorrect. It wasn't what Luther was after.
When Luther heard about the confusion and conflict, he returned to Wittenberg to explain that the gospel cannot be advanced through violence.
We must do to one another as God has done to us through faith. For without love, faith is nothing.
And I find it such a breath of fresh air that when Luther came back to town to continue his work of reformation, he restored peace and order in the city and in the church, not by having laws passed, not by finding more policemen for the local police force, not by force or by sword, but Luther put the unrest to bed by preaching 8 sermons on receiving the Lord's Supper, both the body and the blood.
Where he said, look, we do not force people to believe what we believe, and we do not inflict harm on other people because they believe differently.
I will preach the gospel, teach it, write it, but I will constrain no one by force, for faith must come freely and without compulsion.
I simply taught, preached, and wrote God's word. Otherwise I did nothing. And while I drank beer with my friends, the word so greatly weakened the papacy that no prince or emperor ever inflicted such losses upon it. But I did nothing. The word did everything.